Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am AA Ron, and this is the Inclusive Dad podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me in exploring ways we can create a more inclusive world together. You are important, you matter, and you can make a difference. Today, my guest is Eric Dingler. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Aaron. Good to be here and looking forward to talking about inclusion.
Absolutely. Why don't you just start us off by telling me a little bit about yourself?
All right, so I am legally blind, and so I live this in this world every day, and I leverage that experience through our web design and digital marketing agency, where we work with businesses to help them make their digital content, not just their websites, but all of their digital content inclusive. And so I'm married, and my wife and I, we have four teenagers. All four of them are teenagers now, with our
Wow.
youngest just turning 13. And we have been traveling full time for 4 years. So out exploring the world with our kids and just having an amazing time. We are extremely blessed and highly favored, and just having a blast.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't know you were legally blind. Were you, is that at birth or
From birth.
um me-
Yep. I
okay,
yep, I have a condition called ocular albinism.
okay,
So the retinas of my eyes are pink instead of red, and so I have low vision.
okay,
And
yeah.
in the United States, I can drive with a bioptic telescope device. In a lot of states, there's still states that I can't get a driver's license, but we're in the process of working to immigrate to the United Kingdom, where I'll have to surrender and give up my driver's license. I'm not eligible. I can't get a driver's license here because of my vision. But yeah,
Interesting. I've never heard of that. Do you want what did you say? A biocular what did you say?
a, a bioptic telescope device. Yeah. So
Okay.
in my left glass on my
Yep.
driving glasses, there on mine there are a couple different types of
Sure.
uh, bioptics. But my design is in the right in the middle, but above my center of vision in the
Yeah.
left lens. They drill a hole and they mount a telescope. It sticks out about an
Oh,
inch.
okay.
It's about the diameter of a quarter.
Sure.
And as I'm driving, I look through the bottom part of the glasses as I'm driving. But when I need to see what a road sign says or see a little
Okay.
further ahead, I just pop my head down and look through the telescope for just a second to see what the road sign is or something like that.
Hmm.
And yeah, so when I first got my license, 30, I'm like, well, it wasn't 30, it was 25 years ago in
Mhm.
Ohio. I was in the pilot program for people in Ohio, and there were only like 4 or 5 states where you could legally
Interesting.
get a driver's license with a bioptic. Now there's several more. Again, not
Hmm.
all, but yeah. So that's a
Interesting.
bioptic telescope device.
I had never heard of that. Wow. Learning stuff already. Yeah. Yeah, my daughter Cecilia, she's 22, but she's legally blind, which is I didn't know anything about like the disability world or any of this stuff before she was born. So, when I heard legally blind before that, I didn't think people could see, but now, obviously and I know now that legally blind doesn't mean like you can't see anything. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yep.
it's interesting. But yeah, she had what did she have? She had cataracts in both eyes, which were removed when she was like 2 or 3, and then at least one unsuccessful attempt to get like replacement lenses in. Well, the one time I remember they have to roll it up to slide it down the tube and then it pops open. Well, they did that and it was had a tear in it. So they couldn't do it that day. And then we decided just not to keep trying because they said every time you open the eye up, there's more chance for problems later. So we're just like no. And so she has no lenses in her eyes, just uses the glasses for all that stuff. So yeah, so
Interesting.
interesting.
Never heard of that. Yeah. So there are some people with my condition that
Yep.
will have surgery, because I also have the dancing eyes.
Yeah.
Um, and some people will have surgery on the muscles to stop that, and they may pick up a little bit of visual acuity, but for my case it was going to be just cosmetic, and I
Sure.
was always very much like, I'm not going to take the chance of
Right.
losing more vision
Yeah. Yeah.
for this. I don't care what I look like, whatever.
Yeah.
Now
Interesting.
now, and I'll be honest, that's easier to say now at 50. At
Right.
15, I would have answered that completely different.
Yeah, for sure.
I was very self-conscious at
Right.
15, but now at 50, it's a different story.
Yeah, for sure. What is your definition of inclusion?
That's a okay. My definition of inclusion is uh that reasonable efforts have been made that everybody can participate, regardless of their ability level. I think 100% inclusion is an impossibility, uh, but people making effort is what counts. And so that's on the provider side. And then I think on our side, inclusion comes down to advocacy with grace versus advocacy from a, a perspective of entitlement. And I think when those things come together, that's inclusion.
Yeah, I love that. So how was it growing up for you in school and stuff? Did you have like any IEP or modifications and stuff?
I did. I had an
Okay,
IEP, and I was in a very small school. There was only 44 in my graduating class.
sure.
In fact, I was the only person in my school with a physical disability. Um, and so I had extra time for tests. I could always sit in the front row.
Mhm.
Large print books. I mean, it's and some of the things now I look at what they did, and I mean, it was the best known attempt at
Yeah,
the time.
yeah,
I can't even imagine how much different it would be now trying to do school with my vision.
yeah,
But yeah, I had to go through all of that and everything that came with that. The one thing I could say at the time that wasn't ever a consideration was how a accommodation would be very obvious in public and make me stand out as different.
yeah,
And I think for some now you can't get around that for some,
right.
for some people, depending on their, their challenges. But for like low vision, I think there are some things that could have been done and probably are done now that doesn't wouldn't have made me stand out as the different kid.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so you said you've lived in many places since you guys started kind of living all over the world. What I don't
Yep.
I don't know if you've ever done this, but can you maybe you've seen all these different places and you're legally blind. Like, what are some places that are maybe more accessible? They kind of do things better, in your opinion, for that population than others, like different countries, or some like way better than others, or
I would say that on a whole, um, there are things that countries do better in one area than
okay,
others, but worse in others
sure,
than, and so I think on the
yeah,
whole it averages out.
okay,
But there are definitely countries where, we've been in the, we've been in villages in the depths of the Amazon jungle
yeah,
where there is no
yeah,
concept of that, of
right,
inclusion.
yeah,
Um, and then, you know, I would say Europe does a really great job in a lot of ways, uh, from the things I've seen and experienced, and the people I've talked to. So Europe does
that's cool.
a really good job. Um, they're a little behind the United States in some areas. You know, the Americans with Disabilities Act was really kind of
Hmm.
at the forefront of inclusion, of rights for people with
Right.
disabilities for inclusion. And so now I'm starting to see in fact, the uh, European Accessibility Act, the EAA, just went into effect this year.
Okay.
And so
Oh,
there are countries in Europe that for the first time have some, you know, some actual recourse to help people with disabilities. Now, from that perspective, there are in my industry of web design and digital marketing, most web designers market their accessibility service from the standpoint of let us help you not get sued. Let us help you legally meet
yep.
requirements. Lawsuits are on the rise, and they are. Lawsuits are significantly on the rise. New York passed a law a couple years ago, and there are several law firms that have been filing class action lawsuits, have been targeting specific industries, and it's predatory in my
Yeah.
in my opinion. You know,
Right.
they're sending cease and desist letters, or they're sending letters saying you have 30 days,
Yeah.
or we're going to take you to court and get you this fine. And so most people in my industry come at it from that perspective, and I am really bothered by that because
Mm.
it now makes people with a disability a burden, and that
Yep.
shouldn't be how this is approached.
Right.
And
Yep.
so our approach is very much like, hey, we want to help your business be a good neighbor. Like that's
Yep.
our approach.
Yeah.
And we also talk about the fact the benefit is 25% of people access the internet with some type of limitation, with some type of barrier that's
Mhm.
preventing equal access. And so if you don't do this, you're cutting off potentially 25% of your customer base, which is not a wise business decision. But so we come at it from that versus the law. I think
Yep.
having the law helps, but I don't like using the law to make things happen.
Right. Yeah, I like your approach because I think, like you're saying it. I mean, first of all, it calls out people with disabilities as like the reason we're doing this, and I think that doesn't help because then yeah, part of the stuff I think we're seeing in the U.S., not all of it, but I think that you pass a law, which I love the law, and then you force people to do stuff, and you're always talking about we have that angle like you had mentioned, then it just some people get upset about it, and then but yeah, like you said, I'm a good neighbor. The golden rule. Let's set up stuff so everybody can access it. I mean, and kind of take that part out of it. So I like your approach to that.
Well, thanks. And for most businesses, once we explain like the benefits of universal design,
Yep.
so let's take curb cutouts for
Yep.
wheelchair access. Well, curb cutouts came about to help provide equal access to people in wheelchairs. Well,
Yep.
now everybody uses curb cutouts,
Yes.
people in wheelchairs, but everybody on a bike, a scooter, delivery drivers, a mom or dad pushing a baby carriage, like that that curb cutout actually helped make life for everybody
Yes.
better. That's universal design. And the same exact thing is true when we design a website, when we design an email, when we post to social media, when we create content, and we don't even have to be the one that does it. In the online space, 50% of accessibility, in my opinion, is technical, and you do it one time and you're pretty much done with most of it. The other
Mm.
side of it is just developing new habits. And once you develop a couple new habits, inclusion becomes very easy with content. But what we see happen is just like with the curb cutout, everybody finds your content easier to engage with, easier to follow. It's easier to buy from you, and so all of your customers benefit. And every single time we do remediation with a business, their business increases and grows. Not just though because they're now able to serve customers with disabilities, all of their customers are benefiting from the universal design. So that is, I mean, to me, that's kind of one of the coolest
Yep.
benefits of inclusion and inclusion design and universal design, whether it's a physical space or
Yep.
digital content.
Yeah, for sure. You've talked about the ADA, with the physical part of it. Who does, I mean, and it does apply to like the web stuff. So who does it actually apply to in the digital world, and what parts of businesses' online presence are affected?
So there's a lot of misconceptions about this. And so I appreciate you asking that, because this is one of those things that I think, so your audience, normally I'm on podcasts and I'm talking to
Yep.
business
Yeah. Yeah.
owners, but your audience today, we can, talk about like, how do you advocate for
Yeah.
yourself?
For sure.
Okay. So a lot of business owners have this understanding that the ADA doesn't apply to them because their business hasn't met a income threshold or
Sure.
number of employees threshold. So there is a carve out for some of that, but that is very specifically dealing with physical building remediation and accessibility. The part of the ADA that deals with access to services, the only exception, unfortunately, is religious organizations and private clubs. So if you have a private club, you can be exempt from this. So that means pretty much everybody else,
Yeah.
which is, almost everybody else out there. So your local restaurant, dentist, the local plumber, uh, everybody else
Sure.
out there, their digital content has to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And then there are other parts of the federal law that also steps in to regulate that. There are standards, and the standards that they have to meet. It's actually it's one of the few things that there's actually a universal set of standards that almost every single country in the world, when there is a law talking about standards, they all point to these standards.
Yeah.
And so from the United States, Europe, Asia, there's kind of this agreed set of universal standards
Sure.
for design.
Yeah.
Um, so every business has to comply. I don't care if you've sold $5,000 or you're doing $5,000 a minute in business. Your content, not just your website, the emails you send, your social media posts, all of it has to be accessible.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you send a PDF to someone and they download it, that has to be accessible.
Uh, that's interesting. What makes a PDF like accessible or not accessible? I mean,
Yeah,
can you tell? Like,
keyboard.
just go ahead.
Yeah. Keyboard navigation is one. So if they're going to
Uh,
have it open on their computer, they need to be able to navigate it, especially if it's a form that they can fill in. A lot of PDFs are fillable forms.
yep. Yep.
And so, that has to be, if the form creates an error code, the error code has to be shown in a way that's not just visual. Um, if there's graphic elements to it, then the color contrast. But you can also, if somebody's using a screen reader, you need to make sure that the PDF is tagged with, or properly text is properly formatted so that a
Sure.
screen reader could read it to somebody. And that's
Yep.
whether somebody has a vision impairment. Some people use screen readers
Yep.
because they have dyslexia. Some people use screen readers. There's a medical condition, a disability, where certain letters trigger a smell. So imagine,
Hmm.
Aaron, if every time you saw the letter A, you smelled rotten eggs. Like
Yep.
like, you would not want to do a lot of reading during the
Right.
day,
Yep.
because who wants to smell that all day? So so that's what makes a PDF accessible,
Gotcha.
letting people to be able to use screen readers. And then one area, and it's something that a lot of people don't think of, is they'll say, you know, uh, read the text in red. Well, in the United States of America, 1 in 12 men are red-green colorblind.
Hmm.
So immediately, 1 in 12 aren't going to be able to read that.
Right.
Um, and in your emails. So from a business perspective, and you've probably even done this, Aaron, I used to
Yep.
do it all the time before I became aware. Somebody will send you an email and ask you a question, and you'll reply and say, see my answers in red below. So
Oh,
you go to the
yep.
email and you type it in. Well, again, 1 in 12 men not going to be able to read that.
Sure. Yep.
So when I reply to an email like that, I say, see my answers below in bold red underline.
Okay.
And so the bold underline makes it stand out for
Sure.
individuals that are colorblind. Universal design, it even stands out more for
Right.
those that aren't red green colorblind. So it's even easier for them. And then screen readers are able to navigate that depending upon if the person's using the right email client and stuff like that, which if you were using the screen reader, you're going to use an email client that uh, is accessible to a screen reader. So
Yeah, I didn't even think about that part because yeah, if you can't tell what color, see the red color, that's not going to work.
yeah. Or sometimes
Interesting.
people submit a form on a website and it'll go, fix the errors highlighted in red.
Hmm.
Again, that's
Right.
a really bad way to do that. And so in universal design with digital content, we always want to use multiple ways to
Right.
direct people's attention to something. So we may use a color and an icon. We may use a color and larger font than all the other font on the page.
Yeah.
That's just all for visual. Now we also have to code it for screen reader technology
Sure.
to be able to read it. But the screen reader side, that's the technical side of things that gets done
Yeah.
kind of once and is
Right.
behind the scene. And then it just becomes habit from there on out, just like posting content to social media. So
Yeah. So like I'm not, I mean, I use Go High Level for my business stuff, which has a thing in there to build like a website. Or most platforms such as that or other ones that people use to build websites, or do they have this? I mean, when they build a if you build a website on that platform, does it put some of this stuff into it automatically, or is it all stuff you have to like tweak yourself?
uh, almost every platform like that, you have to tweak it yourself.
Okay.
There are very, very few platforms. Well, I could say this with confidence: there are zero platforms that are 100%. And we are just finishing a project. So in the digital space, we can provide companies for their websites or their apps with something known that's called an ACR, an accessibility conformance report.
Yeah.
And our goal, and there is no way to make an app or a website 100% compliant because of the just the sheer number of different types of disabilities.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and so it is impossible to make it 100%. And so 100% is not our goal. It is to do everything we can to make it accessible to as many as we can.
Sure.
And meeting the standards, they're called WIGAG standards. Meeting those universal standards is how we do it. Now, there's WIGAG 2.1, there's WIGAG 2.2. Some countries require 2.2, some
Sure.
require 2.1. So there's a lag there in some
Yeah. Yeah.
places, and da da da. But if you're meeting the WIGAG 2.1, man, you are way beyond most of your people. Uh, but almost all out of the box CRMs, we use Go High Level a good bit. None of it is accessible out of the block or out of the box.
Yeah. And I use that, so that's what I use for like my calendar to book for the interviews such as yourself. And I mean, I've had people who are, I mean, legally blind, but they can't see anything. They've had trouble, navigating that calendar app to like with their screen reader and using their keyboard to actually, book appointments. So I know there are some issues for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and even people that are in this space still struggle providing those kinds of services.
Yeah.
Um, and so it is definitely challenging. But I think I would hope that most people with a disability,
Yeah.
um, like I I have unending grace for people that are trying. If they're making a legitimate effort and they're trying to make progress and they're doing the best, man, I'm going to extend them grace and help out and do
Yep.
my part. Um, and that for sure. It's where I struggle extending grace and can be very uh non-apologetic to people is when they just have the attitude, you know, because I'll talk to business owners and they'll just go, "Oh, my customers don't have disabilities." Really? Really? You're telling me? Because, for example, this happens a lot with like mechanics. I'll be talking to a mechanic. Well, I serve car. None of my customers have disabilities. You're telling me that everybody that comes to you, that none of them are red green colorblind?
Mhm.
You're telling me that none of them have dyslexia? You're telling me that none of them have, what, like, I can list a whole thing of like,
Yep.
so many disabilities are hidden. Like there is
Yeah.
no visible
Mhm.
outward sign.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of thing. And then I'm always like, and let me ask you this. Is it maybe because you've never opened your doors to customers
Yeah.
that have disabilities? Imagine you're the car, imagine you're the mechanic in town, that there are services now that you can I have a service. So when people sign up through uh my website to schedule an appointment with me, one of the questions to ask on the scheduling thing is, do you need accommodations for our meeting? And I use a
Mm.
service where if somebody said, hey, I would appreciate, and it says, for example, sign language interpreter. If somebody says, well, I need a sign language interpreter, well, there are on-demand sign language interpreter
Yep.
services where you just, you know, schedule it. And when that Zoom starts, one of them logs in and boom, right there, you've got a sign language interpreter. So imagine you're the mechanic in town that has this service and you have a dedicated iPad in the shop that when a customer comes in that is deaf, you just pull it up,
Yeah.
turn
Yep.
it around, and begin having a conversation. And an interpreter right here in front of you. I'm holding
Yep.
my iPad in front of me, just below my chin. You have an interpreter on the screen interpreting what you say, and then the person that's hearing impaired can sign back, and the my interpreter can see it through my iPad camera, and they start talking to me, and I just boom. Tell
Yeah.
you what, if you're the only mechanic in town that does that,
Right.
the deaf community is a tight community that
Right.
communicates with one another. You will have more new customers over the next 3 months that you could ever imagine, because you're the place now that they can go to and know they're going to be understood.
Yeah.
And that's being a good business.
Yeah.
But what business owner knows that exists?
Right.
That's where I think the advocacy through grace comes through.
Mhm.
Like for your audience that's listening, if they have, you know, disabilities themselves or others, and I can struggle with this. Like I struggle going into a restaurant with low lighting, and I get the menu, and it's
Yep.
and it's just it's I use my I'll bring my phone out and turn the use the magnifier on my phone, and it's
Yep.
funny because in Europe now people ask me if I'm a influencer because they think I'm shooting video, but um, we're not by any stretch of the imagination. Uh,
Yeah.
um, and I have to catch myself from getting frustrated. But how are they supposed to know
Right.
that I was going to come walking into their restaurant that evening and I need a large print menu? And when I ask for one, most don't have it. Now I could be all mad and I'm saying, well, you really should,
Yeah.
like this is, I could get all puffity puffity, or I could say, wow, I completely understand, but you know how many people don't ask
Yeah.
for one that needs one? Could I help you find somebody that could help you create a large print menu? And then
Right.
just in all of your menus, just put a little thing that says large print menu available upon request, but make sure it's in large print.
Mhm.
A couple
Yeah.
of times I've seen in really little print on the bottom, and I've only seen it when I've used my magnifier. Large print menu available upon
Yeah.
request, but it's in really tiny little font. Um, so just be, extend grace,
Yes.
assume the best from people, and try to just educate them and try to be a part of the solution.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah, I love your attitude. I've never heard anybody talk about advocacy like advocacy with grace. I love that. I I typed
Thanks.
it down. I'm gonna keep that if
Okay,
that's
you
okay.
go right ahead. It's all yours, Aaron. Take it away.
There
Make
you go.
something big out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it came to mind. So my daughter Cecilia loves music, so we took her to a Post Malone Jelly Roll concert at US Bank Football Stadium in May. And I mean, we've been to enough concerts where I call ahead of time to make sure, do I need to buy companion seats because she has a wheelchair? Are they included? And then they have the bag policy. I'm like, well, she has 3 bags on her chair with like her epilepsy rescue meds and extra clothes and all this stuff. So I'm like, I always check ahead of time. I'm gonna make sure, I don't want to get to the where
Right.
you can't go back and now I can't go in because they won't let her get bring her bag in, which they should, but I don't want to, so I do all this stuff and it's kind of a struggle getting to the seat because nobody knows how to get to it and the elevators aren't obvious and whatever. Then we get up there and somebody's had gotten moved into this spot where we were supposed to be, and this guy was just super upset. Well, he's like right in my face when we get up there, and my daughter's next to me, so she starts like crying because she's overwhelmed. It's loud and he's yelling at me. She thinks that he's mad at me. He's not, but he's just taking it. He's sharing his frustration and get her over. She starts hearing, Jelly Roll sing. All of a sudden, tears are gone. She's just having a fun time. And in that moment, I mean, I'm super amped up because everything has happened, but I'm like, okay, we got here. She's having fun. That's why we came. Just all that stuff that should have happened a different way that didn't. That's not important right now. I mean, I can be upset this whole thing, ruin the experience for me, or I can, like just okay, it is what it is. She's having fun, and then we can worry about it later. And I ended up not even contacting them because it's like, why? I'm not going to spend the time. We got out of it what we needed to. I mean, I didn't need the energy for it, so this time we're just gonna let it go. But you also have to
Yeah.
do that kind of thing sometimes.
Yeah. Because it shouldn't be that way.
It shouldn't
But you
be.
know what? There are a lot of things in life that shouldn't be that way. Things
Hmm.
happen, and
Things happen.
you all you can do is choose how
Yep.
you're going to respond. I can't
Yep.
control how somebody else is. And I've had plenty of conversations with other people with disabilities that come at this from a very different perspective. And
Yeah.
if we don't demand and make enough noise, well, you know what? All you're doing is when they walk away, they're going, "Gosh, I hate those kinds of people. You're making me look bad." Okay. And now when I come in and try to advocate for myself ahead of time, you make it harder. And this isn't everywhere. We were
Yeah.
just in Italy a couple, I don't know, like 6 weeks ago, and we went to the Vatican, and we got into the Sistine Chapel, and I'm an artist. I paint, which is legally blind painter, but whatever. I love doing it. And I really wanted to see the ceiling, but you
Sure.
can't have your phones out. And I wanted to use
Oh,
my magnifier, and I just went up to a guy and I just explained, hey, I can't. And they were like, oh, hey, no worries, come here. And they took me up front, and my whole family went because the place was packed, and they let us get up high on the stage. And I
oh,
mean,
wow.
they bent over
Yeah.
backwards. And then I started, as I was walking out, I noticed that there were other people with disabilities, and there were volunteers with them helping. And so
Oh,
some
wow.
places
Yep.
you call them up and you're like, hey, we're coming. And
Yeah.
man, they
That's
do it
awesome.
right. They
Yep.
do it right. And
That's
so
awesome.
yeah, so the that's a country, Vatican City, that's a country that does it right. Now it's easy. It's a
Awesome.
really small country, but
Right.
still.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What is one tip you can share to help the listeners be more inclusive today? So just something anybody can do starting today to be more inclusive.
I would say advocate when you can, not just for you, but when you're talking to a business owner, ask and offer. Do they ever have an advisory group of people with disabilities? Or
Mhm.
maybe, man, how cool would it be if you went to your local chamber of commerce or business association and said, hey, I would like to gather a panel of 3 or 4 people with different disabilities and offer
Mhm.
a listening session and invite all the business owners in your organization. And they can come and we can share, 15, 20 minutes of some ideas. And then just ask us questions. You can't offend me. Like, and that's the other
Mhm.
thing. Some people get so offended when somebody asks them a question, like
Right.
it, two two of our 4 children are adopted, and I can't tell you how many times. And they're brown skinned, so they're Roma from Bulgaria, so they're
Yeah.
Asian heritage, and so they have an Asian brown to their skin,
Sure.
and so it's very obvious. Um, and when people find out they're adopted, I can't tell you how many people have said, "Oh, well, where are their parents?" You're talking to them. I'm dad.
Wow.
Um, and now some people in the adoption space get very offended by that.
Yeah.
And I'm just, again, I just roll my eyes and I'm like, they're not
Right.
meaning anything
Yeah.
bad by that question. They just don't know. I just kind of little, it's like, well, technically, just so you know, in adoption, I am dad,
Right.
and I'm always going to be their dad because my son or daughter standing there, and I'll say I am their forever dad.
Right.
The wording you want to use is what about their birth parents?
Right.
And to be
Yep.
honest, that's their story to tell, and not something we're going to talk about right now. And I
Yeah.
just let they and every oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. And I go, I know
Yeah.
you didn't. I'm not upset. It's
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
It gives me one more time to say I'm their forever dad because I am.
There you go. Yeah.
Um, and so we have to do the same thing when it comes to advocacy. And I mean, I think it would be so powerful. Like seriously, if somebody really wanted to make a difference, putting together a panel of some people with
Mhm.
disabilities and making yourself available to local organizations, because
Yeah.
every town, every city has several business associations.
Yep.
You're not going to change your city overnight, but you can't. And
Mhm.
the last thing I would say, when I lived in so we lived in Norfolk, Virginia before we left. Many large cities have a in Norfolk, they call them commissioners, city commissioners.
Mhm.
Most cities, the mayor or the mayor's office will have all of these different advisory groups,
Mhm.
advisory on this, advisory on this. Well, in Norfolk and Chesapeake and Virginia Beach and all of those cities, almost every single city had an advocacy group for people with disabilities, or the mayor's council of disability. We were the
Sure.
commission.
Yep.
So I volunteered because they struggle getting people to serve
Right.
on those. So I volunteered and said, I'll serve. And so I had to go to City Hall and get sworn
Sure.
in. But
Yep.
then I was able to sit there and be a part of the conversation every month on how the city was going to improve its services to the
Right.
citizens with disabilities. And we had big conversations about Lime scooters,
Mhm.
and the problem they cause when people just leave them laying in the sidewalk,
Mhm.
because now somebody in a wheelchair, hey,
Right.
how am I going to get around this big obstacle in the way?
Right.
And so there are all kinds of ways to advocate. But I think though that finding out if your city
Yep.
has that, but putting that group together and going to your
Yeah.
chamber of commerce, that could be powerful.
Yeah. That's a great idea. Man, you're really giving me tons of ideas today. This is good.
I'm the strategist in our company. I
Yep.
don't build websites. My job, we get hired because I get to sit and do this with business owners
There you go.
and say, well, what if we did this and what if we
Yep.
did this, and that's my job.
There you go. Awesome. Where can everybody connect with you?
You know, I think in this type of situation, the best way would just be my personal website is ericdingler.com. And so on ericdingler.com, you'll find a link to my LinkedIn. Um, if you are a business owner listening to this, if you are a business owner and you would like help with yours, there's a link to my marketing agency, In Transit Studios. If you're a leader, I do leadership coaching. I have a
Sure.
leadership podcast that's probably one of my favorite topics to talk about is there.
Yeah.
And so everything I have is right there on ericdingler.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You ready for the last question?
Ready for the last question? I have no idea what it is, so hit me.
I'm holding up a can of Spam lunch meat. Do you like Spam lunch meat? Yes or no?
Yes. Is that okay?
Yes. Yeah, that's
Okay.
okay.
Phew.
Yeah, that's fine. I live near Austin, Minnesota, where they make Spam and where the Spam Museum is located. So I've been asking every guest whether they like it or not, just springing them on the end just to see what the reactions are. It's kind of fun.
That's fun. That's fun. Yeah, when we were in South America, Spam
Yeah.
was huge, and
Really? Okay.
flavors of Spam I had
Yep.
never seen before. And when we were in Virginia, I was a pastor. We planted a
Okay.
church, and one year for Mother's Day, we gave all of the moms in the church a can of Spam,
Yep.
but it was a fake can. The bottom
Okay.
opened up; it was a bank, and
Yep.
we filled it with chocolate, and
There
we
you go.
told them to take it and put it in their cupboard because no way the kids are going to grab the can of Spam.
That's funny. That's funny.
So
Yeah, no, yeah,
that's
it's
my connection to Spam.
there you go. I think, yeah, in the Spam Museum, I think there's a display from Britain because I think there's a couple who from United Kingdom that came to the Spam Museum and got married there. I'll have to try to find the story, but I think there was like couple from there that came and got married in like the lobby of the Spam Museum.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Yeah, I haven't looked for it here. I haven't seen it as much,
Yeah.
but I do know in Peru
Okay.
we saw it a lot, and in Asia I know it's very very
Yeah.
very
Yep.
popular.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we saw it a lot in Peru, uh, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Colombia, Argentina. Yeah, so all over South America.
That's great. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thanks for having me, Aaron. I appreciated the
Thank-
conversation.
Yeah. To those listening, thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. It is truly an honor. Please join the podcast newsletter by clicking on the link in the episode description to keep up with the latest episodes. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.